Okay, so let's just address this Jesus is God claim.
In Mark 4:37-40, we read about the disciples with Jesus, and a great wind comes and causes a big storm. Now, of all the things Jesus could be doing, he's sleeping in the stern of a boat. So what's going on here? I think a look at Psalm 74 and Isaiah 51 helps us understand this. Psalm 74 has a psalmist lamenting about the enemies of Yahweh desecrating his temple, and it's in the same vein that when we read Isaiah 51, 9-14, the author is asking God to wake up. If you're not seeing the connection, Mark is making another theological proclamation. Just as Yahweh was asked to wake up in the face of Israel's enemies, so too is Jesus asked to wake up in the face of the chaotic sea. So the calming of the storm in the Gospel of Mark is not just a nature miracle. It's also a theological proclamation that Jesus is God.
Okay, so the first thing I think Than does wrong is he's equivocating where it says Yahweh to wake up, and then we see Jesus waking up. He's equivocating those two things to be the same thing, which I don't think makes a lot of sense. We tell other people to wake up. I have kids. I have to tell them when to wake up. But just for a clarification, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 14 says, "For anything that becomes visible in light, therefore it says, awake, O sleeper, and rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." Obviously, this is talking about believers during that time. So then are we also Yahweh because we are told to wake up? No, that's just silly. I'm really only addressing this too because another person named Wesley Huff, he also came out with the video talking about how Mark establishes that Jesus is God in every chapter. I was going to do that one, but it was just way too long but this one was short, so I figured I would just jump on it. Now, what every Christian apologist, it seems like, always runs away from the idea of a shaliach or an agent, right? And we clearly see agency throughout the Old Testament. Let me give you guys some examples. All right, so in Genesis 19, we have the two angels that they visit Lot. They literally say to him in 12-14, "We have been sent by Yahweh," the Tetragrammaton is in there, the Yud He Vav He. "We've been sent by him to warn you to get out of here, for we, the two angels, we are about to destroy this city." As Lot is warning his family to get out of the city, he says, "Hurry, get out of here, for Yahweh is going to destroy this city." Now, these two angels here represent Yahweh. The messenger here represents the one who is sent. That is the entire idea of a shaliach, or in Greek, it would be apostle. The next example we see is Joseph acts as Pharaoh. Pharaoh establishes him to act as him, only Pharaoh is greater. From Genesis 41, 42-46, we see that Joseph is given the signet ring. He stands at Pharaoh's right hand. He acts as him. And even Judas acknowledges this. And he says in Genesis 44:18, "For you are Pharaoh." Right? In our English translations, it'll say, "You are like Pharaoh, you are as Pharaoh." But in the original Hebrew, it plainly says, "You are Pharaoh." Here's another one concerning with Moses specifically. God chose Moses to basically act as God. We see this in Exodus chapter 7, verse 1. "I have made you God to Pharaoh." Moses here is acting as a representative. So when we ask ourselves, who led the people out of Egypt? Obviously, Moses led the people out of Egypt, as it says in Exodus chapter 3, verse 10. However, it does say that Yahweh, the Yud He Vav He, he led Exodus or Israel out of Egypt in Exodus chapter 13, verse 18. Now going back to Exodus chapter 7, we see in 7:17-20, this is how you will know that I am Yahweh. I, Yahweh, will hold the staff in my hand. I, Yahweh, will strike the Nile River. Did Yahweh do it? Yahweh proclaimed he would do it, but it was actually Aaron. Aaron is the one that held the staff in his hand and that struck the Nile River. When we go to Deuteronomy 31, verses 1-3, it says, "I, Yahweh, will cross over the sea and destroy your enemies." But was it actually Yahweh? No, it was Joshua. Joshua was the one who went through and destroyed all the enemies. In Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 4 and 5, it says, "I, Yahweh, spoke to you, Moses, face to face as I gave you this law." However, in the New Testament, in Acts 7:38 and 53, Galatians 3:19, and Hebrews chapter 2, verse 2, it actually says it was the angel, and 2 out of those verses actually says it was the angels who actually gave the law, not Yahweh himself. So here we see these angels act as Yahweh. In Isaiah chapter 7, verse 3, we have a clear indication of Yahweh specifically telling Isaiah to go out and to speak to King Ahaz. He will tell him what to say and to warn him. So who's the one that goes out? Isaiah. Isaiah goes out, meets King Ahaz, and Yahweh and Isaiah tells King Ahaz what is going to happen. However, in verse 10 of chapter 7, it literally says, and Yahweh continued to speak to Ahaz. So who's the one that spoke? Because clearly Yahweh commands Isaiah to go out, but then it's giving credit to Yahweh actually doing it, which we know he actually literally did not do it. And then our last example in the Old Testament, we have Ezekiel chapter 34, verses 11 through 24. It says, I, Yahweh, will be your shepherd. I, Yahweh, will do this and that. And then he says, behold, I will send David to shepherd you and do this and do that. So Yahweh himself said he will do these things, yet then David is the one that does it. This is just to show you all the examples, and I can keep going on, but I have so much to fit in a 10-minute video, that Yahweh says he will do something, and we see either an angel, which is just a malach, a messenger, which also can be a human, okay? If we go to Haggai and Zechariah, they're called the angel of the Lord or the messenger of the Lord. We see Aaron do it, Moses, Joshua, Isaiah, Joseph acts as the agent to Pharaoh. We see these examples. No one would ever say that any of those human beings are equal or the same to literally Yahweh. Now, this is not just a Old Testament thing either. We see plenty of examples of agency within the New Testament. When we go to Luke chapter 2, starting at verse 9, it says that the angel of the Lord suddenly stood near them, and the glory of the Lord shone, and they were terrified. Verse 13, and suddenly there appeared with the angel a multitude of the heavenly army of angels praising God and saying, verse 15, let's go straight to Bethlehem then and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has made known to us. Now, an argument is going to be that the Lord made known to us. In verse 15, that Lord is kurios, which could just mean an Adonai or can mean an Adoni. But it is worth saying that in the Message Bible, it says God. In the Complete Jewish Bible and the Tree of Life Bible, which are done by scholars, it uses the phrase Adonai, referring to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Also in the New World Translation, it also says Jehovah. So this angel who is identified as Gabriel is then being compared to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. When we read John chapter 3, verse 22 to 26, it says that Yeshua was with his disciples and he was baptizing them, that Yeshua was the one doing this. However, in John chapter 4, verses 1 to 3, it actually says that the disciples were the ones who were actually baptizing him, not Jesus. But why does John say it was Jesus? Because of agent. They were the apostles. They represent Jesus. In Matthew chapter 8, starting at verse 5, and in Luke chapter 7, verse 1, we have the story of the centurion coming to Jesus. However, the stories are a little bit different. In Matthew, it says that it was literally the centurion, but in Luke, it says it was the servant of the centurion. Matthew obviously here is applying the logic of agency by calling the servant the actual one who sent him. The same idea can easily be applied to Jesus. Jesus was one who was sent. He's even called an apostle in Hebrews chapter 3, verse 1, which is, therefore, holy brothers and sisters, partakers of a heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our confession, Jesus. We obviously see he was one who was sent, as concerning Mark chapter 12 and Matthew 21, concerning the parable of the vineyard, where God plants a vineyard, lends it out. He sends people to go collect payment. Then he says, I will send my son to collect the payment. Obviously, the one who is being sent there, the son, that's Jesus, not literally God himself. Now, obviously, I'm not just saying that Jesus is just any old person, but I think it's really important when we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 11, because it basically lays it out for us. Christ is the head of man. Man is the head of woman, but God is the head of Christ. So obviously, going back to those parables, the son is greater than those other servants because he is the heir, but he's also not the one who was sent. I wish Christian apologists made a better effort at explaining agency and shaliach, because they wouldn't have too many loopholes within their arguments. So hope that answers anyone's questions and hope that makes that a lot more clear for everyone. And with that being said, shalom.